Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Baron, and welcome to a Men of War Assault Squad 2 preview. Now, this game has been announced a while ago, and I'd been holding off announcing it as I wanted to see what other content would follow, whether it be pictures or video. At one point there was 10 pictures, and now we have 22, which we will be talking about. If you're watching this in the coming months and gameplay has been out or the game is out, please check the video description below where I will have links to gameplay and other previews as things are updated. You can catch it here first. So that being said, if you want to see Men of War gameplay, you can also check the video description below where I will have a playlist where myself and some of my friends and compatriots in arms have found ourselves in multiplayer maps. And while I may not be the best player, I definitely have a ton of fun, and hilarity usually ensues, if not pretty good tank combat. So let us talk real quickly about Men of War Assault Squad 2 prior to kind of analyzing all of the different screenshots that we have available. The first is that they're going to have 1 versus 1, 4v4, anywhere in that range, and even 8 versus 8 players for giant battles, which is pretty cool. They're also going to implement this new skirmish type system, which sounds almost to be like single player challenges, and you can find yourself anywhere from like really in-depth style tank combat to sniper and stealth missions. So it seems to be kind of a challenge system. Now, with regard to changes between Assault Squad 2 and Assault Squad, they are going to basically fix up the engine. There's going to be improvements to the engine as well as to various visual improvements, which you can kind of see here with some of these explosions right in front of those T-34s. They're also going to add multi-core support, which is great. Advanced shader technology. There's going to be AI improvements. I'm looking forward to that. More advanced camouflage mechanics, and these are going to be affected by season and weather. There's going to be updated graphics, sounds, and then here's something I'm really looking forward to, and that is Steam multiplayer. So now we're going to be talking about the different screenshots, and right here it looks like we have some T-34-85s and a KV-1, and it looks like 3 out of these 4 tanks are detracked. One kind of really cool game mechanic that is unique to the Men of War series is that the tanks have damage models, and then their tracks can be detracked and also repaired. You can also repair damaged enemy tanks and use them for yourself. A game mechanic that I have enjoyed, as I think it's one of the most gratifying things to steal an enemy tank and then kill some of the enemy tanks with it. So moving on, we can see a Martyr 2 right in the foreground, a German howitzer firing, and it looks like in the background you have a Panzer IV. And then if you look further in the background, you can see this really cool port facility. You can see the bunker fuel tanks, train, some cranes, and it looks like it may be a destroyer in the background, as it looks to have 1 or 2 stacks, depending on if those towers are hiding others. And then the deck guns generally look like something smaller that would likely be a destroyer. Who knows? Now we have a Tiger II, a Panzer IV, and a German U-boat, and it looks like there's some guards hanging around, but if you look very closely in the foreground, it looks to be Russian Spetsnaz. Now, I'm not entirely sure, as I'm not very well doctrinated on their camouflage patterns, but I would guess they're Russian commandos, and if they're Russian commandos, I would guess Spetsnaz. You can see 2 creeping behind this Tiger II tank, and then one, the furthest one to the left, looks like he's carrying a body, which is pretty cool. So this may be one of those skirmish single-player stealth type missions. Here you basically have almost all of the German heavies, the German big boys right here in front of you. You've got the furthest one away is a Tiger tank, and then going down that right column we have a Panther, and then what would likely be a Panzer with Schürzen, or basically that side plating, which was used to help defend German tanks against Russian anti-tank rifles. And it looks like it has an assault gun. And then finally you have the biggest bad boy there is for the Germans, the Tiger II, with its Heinzel turret. Here we have what looks like 2 IS-2s storming over a bridge. Leading the way is a T-60 tank. You can see an IL-2 Sturmovik on the right side here, and it looks like, I'm guessing, I think from this angle, it looks like a German Tiger II in the background there, kind of facing off. And it looks like we may have some German machine gun nests, as well as maybe an anti-tank rifle on the back. And then you also have a Sturmovik on the left. Now, here's a bit of a challenge. I've taken a lot of time analyzing these pictures just because I love to do it. But if I've missed anything, let me know. And see if you found anything that I missed. So here we have M4A3 Shermans. Now, I was thinking initially that these might be M4A2, the U.S. Marine Corps equivalents that ran off diesel, because I thought this may look like a Pacific-style map. But then on further inspection, I'm guessing it's actually a desert-style map, because it looks like the infantry's uniforms are actually that of the U.S. Army Corps, as opposed to the Marine Corps. So I'm assuming that these are all M4A3 gasoline fueled Sherman tanks, and it looks like there's one in the foreground. There's some fire. Actually, this is something I just noticed. I think it looks like some of the foliage is catching on fire. Also pretty cool. So here we have in the foreground with that beautiful just flame popping out of that 88mm cannon, a Tiger I with Zimmerit paste. You can see that almost look like etching on the sides of the turret, and then the sides of the hull, and on the front armor plates. That was basically anti-magnetic paste, so mines and other anti-tank devices wouldn't stick or wouldn't be activated by the tank's armor. And then you see a Stug 3 with a tank killing gun, and then in the background we have a Sherman and an anti-tank gun. Pretty cool stuff. And then if you look at that wall real quick on the right side, there's nice little holes where infantry could be popping off maybe bazooka rounds or anti-tank rifles, or if there was infantry dealing with that. So here there's explosions going on everywhere in this little port facility. You can see these little transport ships. And it took me a little bit because I wasn't familiar with some of the later developed American tank destroyers. I thought, oh, this might be a Wolverine or a Hellcat, but this is in fact an M36 Jackson U.S. tank destroyer. Pretty cool. And just look at those effects. You can see parts of the dock falling apart, ships exploding, all kinds of stuff happening. Really cool stuff. There's no one in that turret of the Jackson, which is interesting. And here is another close-up on a Tiger I, and he's got that Zimmerit paste again, and he's got this really cool camouflage pattern. So my question is, this camouflage pattern, what theater of war was it used in? And then if you look right at the tip, basically, of that 88mm cannon, there is an anchor. Pretty random. Now we have another Tiger I. These Tigers are popping up everywhere, basically forcing its way across this bridge. And if you look at the outlay of this map, this would make for a very interesting multiplayer map, whether it be 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, or 4v4, in that it's these two elevated kind of terraces. And then you have this depressed area in the middle where the tracks are running by. And then you have these bridges which kind of force choke points. And you can see this big standoff between the Germans on the right and the Russians on the left. We have T-34-85s, lots of infantry. And then on the right side, it almost looks like it could be a Panther in the background there. And then right behind this one that's getting destroyed, it looks like another Tiger taking a big hit. But pretty cool map layout, as infantry would have to hop down and then maybe hop up, or if it was too much, you'd just basically have to force your way across these bridges. And here we have the Stuka, the Junkers 87 dive bombers, and they are laying some pain on these ISU 152s. Now, looking around, it looks like there's some tanks covered up by tarp, kind of on the leftward side. The maps are looking very detailed. The fire explosion effects are awesome. This is another one that's kind of centered around this port facility. And as it's Russians versus Germans, it looks rather arid, almost looking like a desert map, but I'm not sure what theater or where it could be. Maybe Ukraine or something. I'm not really sure where the... Or just a multiplayer map, so there you go. Who knows? And now we have the American onslaught right here. We have some Pershing tanks, kind of basically right, the furthest one to the left and the farthest one in the back are Pershing tanks. You have the M36 Jackson, and then you have the Sherman Calliope, which you can see right smack dab in the middle of that, the crossing of these two streets. And the Calliope was pretty cool. It's almost like the American equivalent of the Katyusha rockets, where they stuck these racks on top of tanks and then used them. And they are pretty devastating. If you haven't seen them used in Men of War Assault Squad, the first one, you gotta see it, and I'm really looking forward to how they are improved, and the sound effects and graphical effects are improved in Assault Squad 2. So here we have a nice desert map, and you can see a Tiger tank firing in between those streets, and then in front of it, almost advancing, are two Panzer IVs and a Stug 3. The Stug 3 looks like it has an assault gun or infantry support gun, and these Panzer IVs are equipped to deal with enemy tanks with their long-barreled 7.5 centimeter guns. They don't have the Schürzen on the side, but they do look more than able to deal with some of the British and American tanks they're likely to find themselves up against. Overall, the map is looking gorgeous. There's multi-tiered housing, and there's even that minaret almost in the background that may be a mosque or something like that. And here we have a train. Yep, a train. Now look around, because I may have missed something. There almost looks like maybe an ammunition dump or supplies. This is that same map where the train tracks are recessed and you have the choke point bridges. Cool thing about these trains is that they can be manned. My first experience with that was pretty funny, as I loaded infantry up in a train, marched it over to the other side in the hope of surprising the enemy, but he had a tank waiting for me. Very nostalgic right there. And now we have the Japanese finally make an appearance, and I thought these two vehicles were initially different vehicles, but they are actually the same. They're the Japanese Ho-Ni armored vehicle, and on the left it's basically the hatches are opened up, exposing the gun right there, and on the right it's still buttoned up, making it look like a very strange looking turret. But this is not a turret. It's basically just armor supporting it. Now if you look at the infantry that are to the left of the rightmost Ho-Ni, they don't look Japanese to me, so this is kind of leading me to believe this may be another one of those stealth type missions where this crew sneaks around and uses unutilized tanks or kills the crew and then uses them on the enemies. I'm not entirely sure, but those guys almost look like they have German uniforms and helmets. They don't look Japanese to me, but I am not entirely sure. Now we have something pretty interesting, because it's the first time we've seen a glider. Now that glider right there is the British Hamilcar glider, which was able to carry light tanks, including the Tetrarch and the M22 Locust. Both very light tanks, but the fact that you could use these types of things and perhaps put like armor in places where your opponent wouldn't expect them is pretty cool. Another thing that's interesting is that is an American self-propelled artillery right there, and then a British glider. So not entirely sure what's going on, whether it be a mission or if you're able to call in tank carrying gliders or even infantry. That Hamilcar glider was also able to carry basically one light tank or two Bren carriers or universal carriers that the British had, which were pretty effective against other infantry. Now we have right here basically this German convoy. In the rearmost you see that Panther tank. Ahead of them are two King Tigers or Tiger 2s, and then you have two what looks like to be SDKFZ 251 German half-tracks, and then maybe a 222 Recon armored car in the very front. But this is a rather potent looking convoy. You got two of the biggest German tanks there are, flanked with some machine gun carrying lighter vehicles that could deal with infantry. This is looking pretty impressive. Now here is basically what I think is one of those sniper stealth concealment type maps. You have what looks to be a German sniper, based off his livery and what he's wearing right there. And I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but it looks like a Car 98 in his hands. And then in front of him, you have the M8 Greyhound, M8 Greyhound on the far right, and then an M3 half-track right in front of it, with its crew just kind of standing out right there. How convenient, right? Perfect for a sniper to happen upon this crew right here. And now we have a Marine Corps amphibious landing. And it looks like Japanese trucks in the background with some infantry groups. These two P-51 Mustangs coming in. And then you have the LVT amphibious tanks and Higgins boats. And it doesn't look like the Higgins boats have infantry in them or whether they've already been dropped out. But these P-51s are laying a pounding on this beach. And the fact that they have the LVT amphibious tanks are pretty cool, as that would be a lot of fun depending on if maps are amphibious landings or if there's a lot of water involved, basically putting troops where the enemy didn't think you could get them. And now the British are making their appearance. You've got some Cromwell tanks, or excuse me, one Cromwell tank, and then two Churchills, one with an assault gun and one with a tank killing gun. And I missed this at first glance. There's a giant explosion. And who would have done that? Well, look right in that basically house that's kind of destroyed in the very center of the picture. If you look right to the left of that, there's a Sturmtiger with its 380 millimeter assault gun, able to fire what was basically a very unique, almost depth charge mechanism, firing this giant naval rocket. So very, very cool stuff, but that is a giant explosion. You wouldn't want to get in front of that 380 millimeter gun. Here are some more British, and here are three Cromwell tanks basically fording this bridge right here. The maps look really cool. There's that little house, almost guardhouse, and then steps behind the left portion of that bridge so you could march infantry across shallows and maybe seize it that way. The choke points and strategic choke points are pretty cool. If you look far in the background, I just noticed this first time I did it, at the very end of this street that these Cromwells are basically going after, there's a tank silhouette. So let speculation rise as to what these Cromwells are going to war against, or if that's a friendly tank. Not entirely sure, but it does have its side armor to our Cromwells right here. And finally, for the last picture, pretty cool, as it was one of the more iconic features of Men of War Assault Squad the First. If you look here, you got your T-34-85s seemingly guarding this bridge, and then you have the Goliath tracked mine, or the Beetle tank, basically looking like it's going to drive right up and under to the basically very weak underbelly of this rather formidable T-34-85 tank right there. I cannot wait for this game to come out. Any links you'd be interested in, where I got this information, if you haven't found it yourself, will be in the video description, as well as playlists of myself and some of my friends playing Assault Squad. And then once Assault Squad 2 comes back, and you may be catching this video in the next month or two, check that video description, as that's where all the updates will be. And I cannot wait for this game. They're also developing a modern warfare equivalent of Assault Squad, which they're calling Call to Arms, I believe. And buying into that, which is basically crowdsourcing or crowdfunding, the project that they're working on right now, you can actually get into Assault Squad 2 a little early. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out that link. Anyway, I'm Baron. Thanks for watching. And if you want to see more Assault Squad gameplay and Assault Squad 2 gameplay when it comes out, or more Assault Squad 2 previews, make sure to subscribe. And if you're as excited for this game as I am, give this video a little bit of love and hit that like button. Anyway, I'm Baron, and as always, thank you for watching. Yeah, so this thing historically was not very successful because it had a very low clearance, which means any bump in the road would stall it. Also, pathfinding seems to be an issue.
Oh, you don't want to go that way?
Yeah, I'm going this way. I don't...
No, I'm talking to Khan. He's with this KB one. I'm trying to get up. He sees your Goliath. Your left. Go, 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 go. Oh, he's toast. He knows it. He just gave up.